Chapter 5. Psych. Take revenge for me! Rosa's hands were over her head. She pressed herself into a corner, panting. She had never heard Mother this loud before. Take revenge! This one was so loud it rattled around her skull and made her vision blur. Mother, what more do you want? The spell is already... She bent her head down, black spots creeping into the edge of her vision. She was so tired, so tired. Oh God, do you hear the whispering? Oh, that's so unnerving. I don't like it. Sends shivers down my spine. You cannot hide anything from me. What is this doubt you are nursing? You are hesitating. You are crafting another spell. You stupid harlot. That filthy Marquis is exactly the kind of monster I have been warning you about. You dare plan behind my back? I just don't want to kill anyone, Mother. Anymore. She couldn't help but answer back this time. So she already killed somebody. That's interesting. She couldn't help but answer back this time. How could she not? After years filled with love and acceptance, it made her realize all the more how precious life was. The thought of snuffing out somebody else's life sent a detestable shiver through her bones. She had planned on running away from this place, abandoning whatever duty that now fell into her hands. Why was it her duty anyway? She just wanted to take the good memories of this place and taint them no longer. Whatever truth she sought wasn't enough payment for peace. I don't want to. Her voice shook. I don't want to kill Mother. I don't want to kill him, Mother. I don't want to kill anyone. Please. Is this cowardice or stupidity? Whew. You fancy him, don't you? Or you hate him, don't you? Now, what would be true for Rosa? Does she fancy him or does she hate him? I think both, actually. I mean, we've seen this in the scene with Catherine, that Jolene has kind of two faces, two personalities. I think one she fancies, the other one she hates. A little bit like Kath did. So I ask, you fancy him, don't you? Or maybe the voice pewtered out into an abrupt, chilly silence. Rosa waited, sweat dripping down her brow. I knew it. You fancy him, don't you? You filthy whore. It's not like that, Mother. Past and present, rinse and repeat. Always, always a selfish little girl. Rosa was horrified. No, I'm not selfish. A selfish little girl that loves a murderer more than her own mother? With this final proclamation, Rosa was struck to the floor. A feeling of fainting was stronger than ever. Alone in the dark, she lay there, panting like a sick dog, waiting for what would come next. Jolene killed me. Whoa, is this Kath? You made me love him and then he betrayed me. He deserves death. Only you can kill him. I can't kill him. It is what I want. That's not true. It is. You're my best friend, Rosa. Friends avenge each other, don't they? My darling daughter. I could always count on you to do the right thing. So kill him. Kill Jolene. Kill him. Promise me. Make him suffer. Stab him with a knife. Stick a dagger around his throat. Gouge his eyes out. Take revenge. Rosa clutched her head so hard she thought her skull would burst. For a long moment she lay as though she were dead. 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed. Then, in the middle of the empty room, Rosa's voice rang out as clear as a bell. I understand. Uh-oh. Well, she's being used. Phew. Not only by Mother now, but also by Catherine. I really wonder where this leads. Rosa knocked on Jaleem's door, carrying a tray of food. She had been poisoning his meals in small doses for weeks now, taking note of any ill effect it yielded. Whoa. Okay, there had been none. Jaleem was as still fit and healthy as ever. No symptoms at all, even after she had increased the dosage. Either he hadn't eaten anything for a month, or he was immune to poison. Both possibilities were suspect. Rosa knocked again. There was no response from the other side of the door. It may have worked. It was not a total loss, however. She remembered Catherine mentioning how particular Jaleem was with his sleep. Just as she had been about to give up, she had ventured on this hunch. What? She had ventured on this hunch. It was true. Jaleem was curiously rather sensitive to sedatives. Rosa had offered rose tea to Jaleem that afternoon, under the guise that she had made a new recipe. It had been laced with opium and valerian, sweetened with honey just to mask the taste. Whether or not it was the casting of philia, he had drunk it without second thought. Philia was what? Was it the love for family and friends? I think so. He had retired early that evening. Rosa noted the grogginess visible in his gait. She snuck the master key this evening. Tonight is her night. Rosa pushed the door to his room open. Oh, now I'm really curious what she's gonna find. It took a couple of seconds for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. It felt a little different. It felt like a different world inside this room. By closing the door, it was as if she had cut herself off from the living. Rosa took an unsure step once she found her bearings. She placed a tray of food on the nearest flat surface, careful not to make any noise. The candle she lit provided little comfort. It seemed to cower from the intimidating blanket of shadows. Rosa heaved. The air felt humid here, the atmosphere almost stale. Now that she was inside and venturing deeper, a sudden impulse to find the door gripped her. She looked back. It seemed farther away. Why was she so anxious? She had been in his room before. It was perfectly normal. Tonight it was a different story. The room seemed to breathe. Rosa gulped. What a curious word. There was no other way to describe it, though. The flickering shadows made it seem like the walls were respiring around her. The room felt alive. It was asleep, like its owner, but alive. In the dim light of her candle, the red carpet looked like flesh. The furnishing were viscera. It didn't feel like she entered a room at all, but a belly. Something darted in the corner of her eye. Rosa snapped her head. Just a curtain. Rosa let out the breath she was holding in her chest, aware with every move her body made. She tiptoed towards the canopy. What is a canopy? Canopy? I think so, the canopy. It was perhaps the highlight of the room, an organic monstrosity of red plush and velvet. From afar, it didn't look like a bed at all, but a cage. If the room was a cavern of meat, then this was its heart. Rosa approached. Every muscle in her body was tense. Ooh. She could see a figure sprawled on the bed, limbs sticking out clumsily. He was lying on his chest, back bare, clothes littering the floor. Jaleem seemed to have fallen into the bed instead of climbing in. One of his arms struck out from the mattress. His breath was fitful but slow, a light snore coming from him. What was that? Rosa looked around for the source of the noise, but the room was still. A slow trickle of sweat traced her spine. Did that come from the window? Should she check? Ew, I heard the sound too. The left ear. Rosa didn't move. Something was in the room with her. She could feel it. She stole a glance at Jalim. He hadn't moved from the bed. Rosa's ears tried to pick up the faintest noise. It felt like hours of her staying frozen on that spot, wishing to blend with the darkness. Wait, did I really just hear a noise on the left? On my ear, or was that something different? I don't know. Let's continue. But there was no one there. She had probably imagined it. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Getting paranoid in here. The sooner she was out of this room, the better. Philia's effect would diminish once the candle died. After that, she might not have another chance. She had to find out more about him tonight. She thought of her goal helped steel her nerves. Where should she begin? She took a step. Rosa darted her head, looking for the source of the skittering noise. Her ears were too sensitive now. She heard every creak and moan in the room. She took a deep breath. Focus. Rosa surveyed everything. There was a book by Jalim's bedside table. It was only a couple of steps away, but she'd have to come dangerously close to the bed. Uh-oh, can I make a prediction? I think that the hand that we see in the picture, Jalim's hand, will grab her right when she stands there. I mean, it's possible. Okay, let's see what happens. As much as she could, she'd rather maintain the distance between her and the creature on the bed. Creature? Why did she think that? Perhaps it was the arrangement of the sheets, or the shadows playing her tricks, but no. Rosa shook her head. Perhaps there was another place to look. We've come here to gather information. You should check the book. Rosa sighed. Mother was right. She had to check every source to be sure. She inched herself closer to the bed. The faint candlelight indicated that the book on the bedside table was red. It wasn't a journal she had seen Jalim write in. Rosa tiptoed her way closer. Jalim's hand dangled mere inches away. She reached her arms towards the book and swiped it noiselessly. The candle almost went out with her sigh. She backed up from the bed with the book under her arm. Adrenaline surged in her blood. It almost made her smile. Rosa examined her prize. A book in a foreign language. She remembered seeing such thin, obscure characters somewhere. She wasn't sure which country, but it was probably Asian. Yeah, right, Jalim is supposed to be Persian or something, or Asian, I don't know. Probably has to do with that. She flipped the book and saw a piece of parchment folded on one of the pages. A sailing permit for a barge named La Victoria, dated for the end of the month. 2 days from now. It outlined the cargo and the purposes of the trip with no date of return. Traveling? No. Leaving. Jalim was planning to leave. This was a suspicion she had since she had started observing him. His sudden aloofness with the town affairs. A secret purchase of a ship. The decrease of servants in his employ. Now it was confirmed. It's just as well we found this. We must end it tonight, before he has a chance to escape. Although it was a good thing to confirm this suspicion, the fact helped her little. If anything, it just made it even more urgent to find something tonight. She had to continue. Rosa steadied herself and stepped back to the bed. Her hand finally brushed against the wood of the table after some quiet fumbling. She caught sight of something shiny inside the drawer. Open it, child. Rosa pulled the drawer open, ever so slightly. She peeked inside. Inside was an ornate dagger with a golden hilt. set in with rubies. Do we see that? It's really dark. I can kind of guess, yeah. An old, delicate pattern was carved on its blade. There was a heat emanating from it, almost like it was alive, like the rest of the room. She almost missed it in the dim light. Yeah, me too. But there was also a key in the same cabinet. Oh, take the dagger first, take the key first. I'm kind of afraid of the dagger because there seems to be a weird aura around it. Also, if Julian wakes up and I stole the dagger, he could think I want to murder him, so... which secret does the key open? I'll take the key. Take the key and leave the dagger. Oh no, that's Mother. Take the key and leave the dagger. I have a bad feeling about that weapon. Leave it be. Rosa agreed with Mother. The weapon was sinister as it was beautiful. She didn't want to touch it. Rosa took the tiny key into her hand, feeling the cool metal against her palm. She pushed the drawer back. Julian shifted. Rosa blew the candle out. She scuttled behind the small table. It barely hit her. Julian had changed position in his sleep. Now his face was in full view and facing her direction. Rosa's heart banged in her chest. It was so loud, she was concerned the room might echo the sound and announce her intrusion. Rosa waited for a few minutes before moving. Yeah, I know that. When it's night and it's super quiet, you make the tiniest sound and you have the feeling it's so loud, even though it's not. She decided to crouch down, holding the unlit candle close to her chest. Easy now. She shuffled away from the bed in relief. The candle was dead, but her eyes were now well adjusted to the darkness. She could make out a desk in the furthest part of the room. He must do most of his writing here. Oh no, that's Mother again, sorry. He must do most of his writing here. There. There is a huge chance the journal is near. It wasn't very dignifying, but Rosa decided to crawl towards it. Now that Joleem's face was in full view, a flutter of an eyelid was all it would take to catch her. It would be better to minimize the risks. She dropped to her knees and placed her palms on the floor. She drew her hand back. Was she imagining it? When her palms touched the floor, it felt warm and wet. Her fingers were sucked into the floor as if she touched soft, pulpy flesh. Hallucination was so strong that her nose detected a spray of iron in the air. Her stomach heaved. She rubbed her hand. There was no wetness or blood anywhere. The floor was solid. It must have been her imagination. Rosa touched the floor warily, putting it and pulling on the carpet fibers. Just a normal carpet. Rosa let out slow, small breaths as she started to move once more. She padded her way to the desk. Every time her skin came into contact with the floor, bile rose up her throat. It took some effort to resist the urge to gag. Finally, the desk was directly in front of her. She looked back at the bed. From this angle, it was hard to tell if Joleem had moved. She hoped that the big desk also hid her in its shadows. Rosa rummaged. There was no trace of the book on the tabletop. She only found a pot of ink, loose sheets of paper, and a quill. That damn thing had to be close. She opened the first shelf and found a stack of papers. Nothing. She shuffled through them, but the drawer didn't have the journal. She looked through the second drawer, and the third. There was nothing of interest. Finally, she pulled the last drawer. It was locked. Rosa sucked the air through her teeth. Of course it is locked. How could I have been so stupid? Rosa slumped in a depressed heap. The key. Rosa looked at the key in her hand. She slid it into the hole and heard the lock click. A deep feeling of relief washed over her. Actually also over me, because that Kind of tells me I made the right decision, I hope, to take the key. The drawer slid open. Rosa looked inside, and there it was. In her eyes, the green journal was a treasure. She lifted the book from its resting place. It was heavier than she expected. Rosa smiled. She ran her hands along the velvet cover of the book, savoring the texture. At last, she had it. Child. Mother's voice was riddled with anxiety. Something's wrong. Her excitement had clouded her senses. Almost at once, she felt... What do I see? It's the same room? No. What? Almost at once, she felt a change in the air. Everything was still. Her stomach shrunk into its cavity. Fresh sweat broke out on her scalp. The silence, it had weight. It pressed on her skin and made the air thin in her lungs. Rosa stood up. She had to leave. Now. Rosa shuffled her way out of his room. With every step, her legs seemed to stick uncomfortably to the floor. It slowed her movement. One more step. Her whole foot felt like sinking. She held onto a chair and staggered back. It was throbbing, musty and red, alive and without skin. Ew. The air was filled with the unmistakable stench of fresh meat. Rosa ran to the door. She didn't care that the handle seemed to curl around her fingers. She pushed the door open and spilled onto the corridor. Rosa fell to her knees while she heard the door close behind her. It almost felt like the door closed by itself. In her confusion, she couldn't be sure. Rosa's heart pounded heavily in her ribs. Just looking at the doorway of the room made her skin crawl. Rosa gathered her wits and stared at the journal in her hand. She hoped it would contain the information they needed.